In 80 AD, in the Eternal City of Rome, the magnificent Colosseum presented a breathtaking spectacle. It stands packed to capacity with a cheering crowd. Approximately 50,000 spectators held their breath, their eyes fixed on the sun-drenched arena. Suddenly, a deafening roar shook the air, making hearts pound. But this time, it was not a valiant gladiator entering the arena, but a ferocious beast, the embodiment of wild nature. Its golden fur gleamed in the sun, and its predatory gaze instilled terror in the hearts of the audience. It was an African lion, a mighty representative of the fauna from a distant continent, hitherto unseen by the Romans. The show at the Colosseum was not merely a bloody entertainment. It was a symbol of the empire's might, a demonstration of its boundless power. Rome conquered not only lands and peoples, but also nature itself, bending it to its will. The Colosseum arena became the epicenter of absolute power, where wild beasts stood as silent witnesses to Rome's grandeur. Could one possibly imagine the emotions that overwhelmed the hearts of the Romans at that moment? They witnessed their empire striving not only to entertain, but also to astound, to strike awe. And it achieved this by using wild animals, torn from their natural habitats, brought from the most remote corners of the world, only to die in the arena, to make Rome roar even louder, showcasing its strength and dominance. Yet, this was only the beginning of a captivating performance. If what you've seen so far seems incredible, then prepare for animal number 6, whose unpredictability was so great that even the Romans themselves didn't know what to expect. Would it kill a gladiator or provoke an explosion of laughter from the audience? The intrigue mounted, and the Colosseum held its breath in anticipation of the next act of this bloody drama. To fully grasp the significance of the events unfolding in the Colosseum arena, one must delve into the history of ancient Rome. In those times, the circus played a role far beyond simple entertainment. It served as a powerful tool in the hands of the authorities, a means of propaganda and maintaining control over a vast empire. Roman emperors, seeking to consolidate their power, used gladiatorial contests and spectacular shows featuring exotic animals to demonstrate their unlimited strength and ability to subjugate not only various peoples, but also nature itself. Imagine yourself as a Roman citizen, taking a seat in the stands of the majestic Colosseum. The bright sun beat down mercilessly, while the emperor, seated in his private box, watched with a satisfied smile as wild beasts engaged in deadly combat with each other. This was not merely an amusement. It was a constant reminder that the Roman Empire held dominion over all lands, peoples, and even the fiercest creatures on the planet. The spectacle presented before the eyes of the Roman people was not limited to grim entertainment. It conveyed a clear and unambiguous message. Behold what we have brought. See how far our power extends. Neither gods nor monsters can challenge the greatness of Rome. The animals released into the arena were not just wild beasts. They were symbols of the absolute and undisputed power of the Roman Empire. Among the formidable inhabitants of the Colosseum, the lion, rightfully bearing the title African beast, held a special place in the hearts of the Romans, being not just a participant in bloody spectacles, but also a symbol of the empire's grandeur. Its appearance in the arena was akin to the manifestation of a living legend, embodied in golden fur, a fiery mane, and a piercing gaze. The roar of this predator, shaking the amphitheater, sounded like a thunderous declaration of Rome's global dominion. Lions were transported to Rome from distant corners of Africa, Ethiopia, Libya, and Morocco, where they were captured, placed in sturdy wooden cages, and sent on a long and perilous journey across the Mediterranean Sea. This journey, full of hardship and mortal dangers, was endured by few. However, those who survived arrived at the Colosseum, exhausted but full of fury, ready to unleash their might upon any opponent. Released into the arena, the lion fought not only gladiators and slaves, but also served as the embodiment of Rome's own strength and power. The bloody spectacle became a reflection of the authority the empire demonstrated to the world. Witnessing the lion's ferocious struggle was not considered an act of barbarism. On the contrary, it was perceived as a symbol of civilization and the absolute power of an empire that had subjugated nature itself. In the wild, the lion undoubtedly sat on the throne, but elephants were the true embodiments of might and majesty. One can only imagine the awe that gripped the hearts of the Romans at the sight of these gigantic creatures majestically parading around the arena. These were not just beasts, but living monuments, inspiring reverent terror with their size and imperturbable demeanor. A certain human wisdom could be read in their eyes, making spectators wonder whether they were facing a wild beast or divine retribution. Elephants were brought from afar, from the depths of African jungles, or even exotic India, traversing immense distances across waters and boundless lands. This perilous journey became a deadly ordeal for such large animals. Many perished en route, but those who survived appeared before the Romans like monsters from another world. However, in the Colosseum, elephants were not met with deserved honor, but cruel humiliation. They were forced to fight gladiators armed with spears and flaming torches. Often, elephants engaged in bloody duels with each other, while the audience, gripped by mad excitement, cheered wildly. In the most horrific cases, they were used as instruments for public executions. With powerful trunks, elephants would lift those condemned to death and slowly, excruciatingly crush them, while the mesmerized crowd applauded every dying crunch. In the era of Rome's grandeur, when amphitheaters became an arena for demonstrating might and triumph, exotic animals played a special role. The Romans, known for their pragmatic approach, saw these colossal creatures not merely as curiosities, but as powerful tools for asserting their dominion, a symbol of absolute power over a world where even the most majestic beings submitted to the empire's will. Among the diverse array of beasts presented in the Colosseum, the lion embodied dominance, the elephant titanic strength, but there was one who inspired a completely different kind of dread, the crocodile. This predator, emitting no fearsome roar, with its mere appearance on the sand, made spectators feel a chilling terror. It was the embodiment of wild, primal force, evoking genuine fear. Crocodiles were brought to Rome from the depths of the Nile, where skilled slaves, risking their lives, captured these dangerous reptiles. Subduing a crocodile was no easy task. A single snap of its jaws could sever a limb. The Romans exercised extreme caution, transporting them in wooden crates filled with mud and stagnant water, which turned the sea journey into a malodorous torture. Upon arrival at the Colosseum, crocodiles were released into the arena, where artificial lagoons, resembling the Nile Delta, were sometimes recreated, or they were used in simulated naval battles. Left to their own devices, the reptiles glided among unarmed slaves, engaged in bloody water fights, demonstrating their relentless cruelty. No one could predict where their fury would turn, on people, other animals, or simply everything around them. What captivated the Romans about crocodiles was not only their deadliness, but also their unpredictability, their wild, untamed nature. The annals of the Roman Empire record not only triumphs and conquests, but also moments of confrontation with untamed nature, when wild beasts became a symbol of defiance to imperial power. The Romans, accustomed to spectacles where might and cruelty were the main protagonists, saw in these creatures proof that the empire could bring forth not only monsters, but also beings beyond control. Among all this diversity of wild inhabitants of the Colosseum, the hippopotamus held a special place, an animal that seemingly did not fit into the logic of gladiatorial combat. Visually clumsy, with a good-natured expression, it appeared more as a comical character than a formidable opponent. However, behind this deceptive appearance lay incredible strength and an unpredictable temperament. A hippopotamus was capable of crushing a chariot with a single movement of its jaws, demonstrating its power and disproving initial impressions. The Romans, captivated by exotic animals, were initially bewildered upon seeing a hippopotamus. Its appearance provoked laughter, but soon spectators were convinced that its fierce character was far more dangerous than any beauty presented in the arena. Brought from the banks of the Nile, these animals cost considerable effort and lives. The process of their capture was so complex and risky that many slaves perished in attempts to subdue their wild nature. Capturing a hippopotamus required not only brute force, but also patience and a carefully devised strategy. In the Colosseum arena, hippopotamuses were released to fight gladiators or other animals, turning the performance into a chaotic spectacle. The unpredictable behavior of the hippopotamus kept spectators on edge. It could suddenly attack an opponent, or it could charge into the stands, forcing Romans to frantically seek cover. The audience did not know whether to laugh in surprise, scream in fear, or simply hide, escaping the enraged beast. The majestic cruelty of the hippopotamus presented a captivating spectacle that Rome craved. Watching this massive riverine behemoth crush everything in its path served not only as a display of untamed power, but also symbolized absolute control. In the eyes of the Eternal City's inhabitants, nothing spoke louder of the empire's greatness than a wild beast that acknowledged no rules. While the hippopotamus embodied brute force, giraffes and rhinoceroses plunged the Roman public into a state of profound astonishment. The appearance of the first giraffe in the Colosseum arena was met with deafening silence, caused not by fear, but by genuine wonder. With its disproportionately long legs, elegant neck, and graceful movements, the giraffe seemed like a creature from another world. Romans, having never seen anything like it before, dubbed it the leopard camel, puzzled as to whether it was an exotic variety of horse or a whimsical experiment of the gods. It was Julius Caesar who first introduced the giraffe to Rome as an exotic gift, yet the attitude towards this astonishing creature was not always one of admiration. Sometimes it was used as a symbol of luxury, paraded through the city streets like a living ornament. In other cases, the story took a crueler turn. The giraffe was displayed in the arena, surrounded by predators, or turned into an object of ridicule, with dwarfs seated on its back as pathetic riders. Alongside the giraffe, which caused wonder, the rhinoceros instilled genuine fear in the Romans. Its thick hide seemed impenetrable to arrows, giving rise to myths of a sacred animal sent by the gods from the desert. However, once in the arena, the rhinoceros transformed into a ruthless machine of destruction. Transported from afar, from India or sub-Saharan African lands, it endured a deadly journey to demonstrate its might in the heart of Rome. Spectators watched in fascination as the rhinoceros clashed with a lion, comparable to two living tanks battling for supremacy. The arena trembled with their ferocious attacks, the crowd cheered, and the emperor looked on with satisfaction. These exotic animals served not only as entertainment, but also symbolized Rome's undeniable superiority over the wild. No less impressive a spectacle were the bears, whose ferocity and power found their place in the Colosseum arena. In Rome, bears personified the untamed force of nature, reminding people of the wild essence that persisted within them, despite their capture and subjugation. In the mountainous regions of Europe, hunters treated bears with reverence, considering them almost divine beings. However, in the arenas of ancient Rome, this respect transformed into a grim spectacle. Bears were captured at a young age and subjected to training, taught to fight not only gladiators, but also other fauna such as wolves and boars. Some bears, thanks to their ferocity and agility, gained public recognition, but this could not tame their wild essence. A wounded bear was capable of crushing the cage that held it, sweeping everything in its path. And the Romans were well aware of this. That is why the most thrilling and memorable battles in the Colosseum involved these animals. There is a legend of how an enraged bear, breaking its chains, once charged directly at the emperor, prompting an immediate evacuation. Spectators froze in terror, and this incident only strengthened the legend of the beast. For the Romans, the bear embodied a harmonious combination of wildness and tameness. It served as a constant reminder that, despite all human attempts to subdue nature, it was always ready to break free at the most unexpected moment. In the Colosseum, gladiators engaged in combat not only with each other, but also with wild beasts. The relationship between humans and animals in the arena was much deeper and more complex than it appears at first glance. Both gladiators and beasts were victims of the same system, participants in a cruel spectacle designed to satisfy the public's thirst for blood and entertainment, its desire for power, violence, and control. In the majestic amphitheaters of ancient Rome, where the arena sand remembered triumphs and tragedies, gladiators, having undergone rigorous combat training, became the last hope for survival in a deadly fight. Their opponents were not only their own kind but also exotic wild beasts, brought to Rome from the most remote corners of the empire. These warriors were a living barrier between civilization and wilderness, between man and beast, and also the embodiment of Roman valor. Their courage served not only as a means of survival, but also as confirmation of Rome's undisputed power over all living things. The wild animals presented in the arena were not limited to the role of mere opponents. They symbolized the immense power of the empire, capable of subjugating even the most untamed forces of nature. The clash between a gladiator and a lion transformed into a grand spectacle, demonstrating Rome's fearlessness in the face of the most formidable forces of the wild world. However, beyond their entertainment function and display of imperial might, circus performances served as an important political instrument in the hands of Roman emperors. In an era when the empire's stability depended directly on the well-being and satisfaction of the people, the spectacles in the Colosseum took on special significance. They distracted the masses from pressing problems, shifting their attention from the political and social crisis that threatened Rome. Bread and circuses. This formula was believed to ensure the loyalty of the populace and maintain the emperor's power. While the Romans reveled in the spectacle of bloodshed and thrilling clashes between humans and wild beasts, the emperor skillfully reinforced his image as an omnipotent and outstanding ruler. He exerted control not only over vast territories, but also over the souls and minds of his subjects. Exotic animals, brutal battles, and the majestic scale of these performances served as a constant reminder that the Roman Empire not only ruled the known world, but also subjugated nature itself. In the Colosseum, everything was meticulously planned to ensure that the emperor remained the focal point, and the wild beasts, gladiators, and the Roman people served a single purpose: to affirm the empire's supremacy. However, behind every performance in the Colosseum, behind every animal roar and every bloody clash, an important question arises: were these animals the true heroes of the arena, or were they merely tools to satisfy the empire's darkest desires? In their quest to demonstrate their power over nature, the Romans knew no bounds. The capture of these wild animals, their transportation in inhumane conditions, and their being thrown into the arena for deadly fights were not just entertainment, but a demonstration of absolute control. Animals were forced to fight. Many perished even before arriving at the arena, and those who survived arrived exhausted, only to become part of the spectacular cruelty. The bloody spectacles of ancient Rome, unfolding in the Colosseum arena, evoked both horror and admiration. Particularly striking is the fact that for many spectators, the suffering of exotic beasts became not just an element of the performance, but a peculiar confirmation of the greatness of the Roman Empire. It was not just about brutal contests, but also about the public degradation of nature itself. While the crowd cheered, A question hung in the air. Were these animals full participants in an epic drama, or were they merely silent victims of a ruthless system that cynically used them to achieve its own ends? The performances in the Colosseum had a profound impact not only on the animals and gladiators, but on all of Roman society. Witnessing wild beasts fighting to the death, contemplating brutal contests, undoubtedly fueled a cult of violence and unlimited power. For the Romans, the Colosseum became a reflection of their self-identity, a society that glorified conquest, strength, and self-sacrifice. These events were a direct reflection of the values underlying the empire: superiority, control, and the ability to subjugate everything, even the wildest manifestations of nature. However, there was a price to pay for everything. In a society where human and animal life was devalued in the arena, cruelty gradually became commonplace. Romans grew up perceiving these spectacles as an integral part of their daily lives. And with every dying roar, with every bloody struggle, the idea that violence was an effective tool for maintaining order and preserving control was reinforced. In the heyday of the Roman Empire, when ambitions and the lust for power reached their zenith, the Colosseum became not just a place for gladiatorial combat, but a true theater of cruelty, where blood flowed freely, pleasing the eyes of thousands of spectators. It was a spectacle designed not only to satisfy the base instincts of the crowd, but also to distract their attention from the harsh realities of imperial life, fostering a culture in which human life lost its value in the face of entertainment. Millennia after the last cry of agony echoed through the walls of the Colosseum, we can still observe the material evidence of these bloody performances. The Colosseum stands as a monumental reminder not only of Rome's grandeur, but also of its excess and cruelty. Every stone, every crack in its walls tells the story of an empire that not only conquered peoples, but also subjugated nature itself, using its resources for its own ends. And while today the Colosseum is revered as an outstanding architectural achievement, its history carries a sinister undertone. The Roman people, who watched the bloody contests with delight, could not have imagined that the very creatures that served for their entertainment and amusement would become part of the empire's legacy, leaving an indelible mark on history with their cruelty and inhumanity. Today, the Colosseum attracts millions of tourists from all over the world, but behind every photograph and every selfie lies a dark and tragic history. Rome, striving for absolute dominion not only over people but over the entire surrounding world, left the Colosseum as an eternal reminder of a time when cruelty was not only tolerated but glorified. Recalling the captivating yet horrifying spectacles that unfolded in the Colosseum arena, we are presented not merely with cruel entertainment, but rather a mirror reflecting humanity's grand ambitions. Ancient Rome aspired not only to conquer new territories and subjugate peoples, but also to demonstrate its absolute dominion over all creation, from wild nature to divine forces. Wild beasts, courageous gladiators, and rivers of spilled blood all served as elements of an intricate game of power, where brutality transformed into a peculiar manifestation of civilization. However, contemplating these historical events, one inevitably questions our own nature. The Romans, by using animals in their shows, sought to teach lessons of control and mastery. Yet, ultimately, they lost control of their own humanity. Behind every roar of a beast, behind every fierce battle, lay a profound and uncomfortable lesson. True strength lies not in domination, but in acknowledging forces beyond control. Rome conquered the world but proved unable to govern what truly matters. Perhaps this is the most significant legacy the Colosseum left us. It matters not how powerful or cruel an empire may be. Ultimately, it is not power itself that matters, but the humanity behind it. How do you evaluate these spectacles? Do you believe the Romans truly managed to subjugate nature, or did they merely exploit it to satisfy their entertainment needs?